We need to remember that we've had a pretty good run, both on the Dow, the S&P and the Nasdaq, and on world stock markets. We're up something over 20% in the course of the last 3 months. Fortunately, we have been sustained by better than expected third quarter earnings. Something like 80% of them have beaten expectation. But there is a limit to how far we can go. I think everybody is looking very closely at the Fed tonight. It's all really about the Fed and non-farm payrolls. The Federal Reserve is likely to open the doors for about £500 billion worth of asset buying in the form of bonds. But I don't think they'll go for any more, because I think the Republicans are pretty unhappy about the floodgates being opened. And if they did offer $1 trillion or something of that ilk, I'm pretty certain the Republicans would repeal it through the Congress. And I think also that the Federal Reserve will drip feed this. This should have the effect of actually stimulating stock markets, because alternate asset classes are at present deeply unattractive, and the bond market is close really to popping because yields have come down so low, and providing good companies continue to pay dividends, that's fine. The other thing is, of course, unemployment, which is, I think, the reason why President Obama has been rejected by the electorate. 9.6% or 15 million people is completely unacceptable. And therefore, I think what else they'll be looking for is later in the week, or perhaps early next week, to see whether President Bush's tax cuts are renewed again. I think these are the kind of packages they are. The other side of the coin is that the Republicans are very likely to insist on tighter regulation for the banks. And that being the case, of course, it could damage growth. I think cautiously we'll go ahead, because I don't think there are any alternative asset classes, and the corporate results are good. But 2011, that represents, I think, a real challenge.
It comes to the question of confidence again, and in terms of what kind of confidence the markets have in the Republicans in power. How does that translate into dollars?
Well, I think basically, had the Tea Party not been so right-wing in its views, I think a lot more people would probably have voted Republican. And I think they've had probably quite a reasonable majority in the Senate. But that is not the case. So President Obama has a certain amount to play for. I think confidence has been restored, because I think President Obama now is forced to listen to the majority of what they want. And, you know, I think this is a really big success story in that vein. I think the other thing that slightly concerns me is that the Federal Reserve has had its own policies and has been allowed to really do what it wants to do as regards fiscal policies. That, of course, come what may over the question of quantitative easing number 2, could well change in the months to come. These are very interesting times, but the immediate reaction, I think, will be seen by stock markets as positive.